Hello, class. Now, this lecture is titled Factions, a Problem or Solution for the undergraduate course on the history behind the American government. This lecture is tied to the module on the Federalist Papers, specifically the one written by James Madison called Federalist 10, and its title, The Utility of the Union as a Safeguard Against Domestic Faction and Insurrection, written November 22nd, 1787. Now, Madison, of course, was a learned man, as many of the founding members of our country were. They were well versed in historical examples of government, taking and rejecting the profitable and well organized portions of those governments to influence their own. Now, much of the issues that plagued the ancient governments, specifically of both the Athenian democracy and the Republic of Rome, stemmed from factions within those countries. Now, Madison defines factions as a number of citizens, a majority or minority, united and actuated by some common impulse of passion, adverse to the rights of other citizens and or the interests of the community. Never before had there been the experiment undertaken to create a republic in such a large geographical area as the one designed for the new American nation. Previous examples of republics across history had always found success, for the most part, in the closeness each citizen had to each other by proximity and also interest. The idea of a large republic, then, was foreign and rife with the inability to keep the interests of the many cohesive towards a shared goal. So was assumed at the time. A common theme within the Roman Republic and continuing into the empire was the tendency to break government business and spend resources of time, money, and power to control the violence of factions, leaving the business of governing unhandled and continually behind in its purpose and duty. Now, during the fall of the Roman Republic, two factions made war on each other, those supporting Julius Caesar and those on the side of Pompey the Great. Faction strife never ended throughout Rome's existence, as one military leader after the next made their claim to the rulership, further weakening and eventually breaking the empire in two. Madison understood there to be two ways to control this crippling reaction to factions. One was to remove the causes of which create a faction, or second, to control the effects of factions themselves. If removal is the chosen remedy, it can be accomplished in two ways. Either by destroying the liberty essential to a faction's existence, or to give to every citizen the same opinions, passions, and interests. The fledgling American government wanted to amplify liberty, but liberty is to factions as air is to fire, and yet liberty is essential to political life and cannot exist without factions. Factions then impart to liberty its destructive tendency. Now, Madison's ideas were revolutionary, looking to the varied interests of a large population, being in fact the antidote for preserving a republic. When the historical record gave cause to question the success of a large republic, many rejected Madison's ideas, some of whom wrote their own letters in what we call the Anti-Federalist Papers, even going as far to make their point in signing some of their letters with the name Brutus, a reference to the fall of the Roman Republic as last attempt to preserve it, and Julius Caesar's last words, Et tu, Brute? You too, Brutus? As he plunged his dagger into his side. Unfortunately, other factions rose to the occasion, and Octavian, later consecrated Augustus, the relative of Caesar, won the day as Rome's first emperor after defeating another faction organized around Mark Antony. Now, a controversial point about controlling the effects of factions comes from the idea that division of opinions, though they may be despised by their counter-arguments, are the exact thing that prevent the overthrow of one faction over another. Consider Black Lives Matter and the Ku Klux Klan, Antifa and the Proud Boys, the pro-choice movement, and the ones defending the unborn, the Republican Party and the Democrat Party, Moms Demand Action, and the pro-2A movement, people in favor of birthright citizenship, and those promoting merit-based citizenship. All of these unknowingly control the effects of factions. Some of these may draw our passions, yet none of them control completely the majority. In fact, when considering the many interests groups in the country as factions, citizens would find themselves in agreement with some that oppose another. People in a large republic, like ours in America, would also find that they are not solely passionate in one faction, but may give their allegiance to many different factions, of whom other members of that faction would not agree with them on other associated factions. To put it more plainly, two citizens of a republic, Sam and Dan, may agree to both affiliate with the faction on defending the unborn, but disagree on the issue of citizenship. So when an election in their shared region is needed, the candidate running for the position must garner a vote from both men, even though they do not agree on all aspects of their passions. This is the beauty of a Republican style of government. Additionally, our two-party system, though scrutinized by many, must absorb many different factions in order to win a countrywide election. The control of factions is best within a republic as opposed to a democracy because of constituent representation. To first explain this, let us begin with democracy, for which so many call our government form. In ancient Athens, where they practiced a pure democracy, each citizen had a say in every decision of the polis. In the time of Socrates, the members of the forum gathered in that moment and chose death for the rebel among them. When the forum held another vote just a few weeks later, the members regretted ever putting an end to Socrates. In this example, the whims of democracy swayed from side to side and in as many directions as there were ideas of the individuals gathered in the forum. When factions accumulated in number, a majority would rule over the minority. Pure democracy is mob rule. And as Madison writes, when the majority is included in a faction, the form of popular government enables it to sacrifice to its ruling passion both the public good and the rights of other citizens in the minority. In a republic like the one in Rome, before the time of the Caesars, elected senators representing constituents of a given geographical location had to garner votes from a variety of different factions, giving not one faction the majority to control the government. When factions arise in a republic, their numbers may be large and even become the majority, but the minority is still represented and cannot be put out of the decision process because the representatives were elected by more than the sentiments of one faction. In fact, representatives in republics represent many factions in one person. Our large geographical territory makes for the interests of people varied. As we know, the people in Alaska need and want different things than those in Florida. And even the people of Virginia and West Virginia vary in what their interests and needs of the government are. Madison was convinced this large territory creates a larger number of factions, of which no singular one would be able to claim the majority and subjugate the minority. What becomes difficult to accept is that our differences in this country protect our liberty. And Madison learned this from reading the historical record of our ancestors' attempts to secure liberty for their posterity. Now, I thank you for listening and have a good evening.